He stumbled out of the wreckage, the ground crunching beneath his boots, a mix of dust and jagged metallic debris. Towering biomechanical beasts roamed the horizon, their hulking forms moving like clockwork nightmares. He knew he needed to find shelter fast, but something else caught his attention, a faint shimmer in the distance. Curiosity and survival instinct led him forward. As he approached, he saw her. Half buried under debris, an alien girl, her skin pale and shimmering faintly in the planet's dull light. She was alive barely. He knelt beside her, studying her strange yet familiar form. Her species, the Zalith, were known throughout the galaxy, though they kept to themselves. The people of her race were often viewed as aloof and superior, rarely interacting with other species unless it benefited them. Why was she here, on a death planet like Drakkar, seemingly left to die? Alex hesitated. She was not his responsibility. But something in her fragility stirred something in him. He wasn't the type to abandon someone in need, no matter their origin. With careful precision, he pulled the debris off her body and inspected her injuries. Deep gashes ran across her arms and torso, likely from the razor-sharp claws of the biomechanical predators that roamed the planet. He could leave her to her fate, or he could help. Despite the harshness of Drakkar, the choice for Alex was clear. He couldn't just walk away. He quickly got to work, binding her wounds with makeshift bandages from his survival kit. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold. She stirred slightly, eyes fluttering open for a brief second, just long enough to see him. Her eyes, dark and intense, focused on him with confusion and fear. She tried to pull away, but she was too weak. "Easy," Alex muttered, trying to calm her. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't respond, her gaze still sharp, yet she made no further effort to resist. Alex could feel the weight of her distrust. He knew her kind considered humans little more than pests, a primitive species that had clawed their way into galactic relevance through sheer stubbornness and luck. But here, on this planet, superiority meant nothing. Only survival mattered. The ground trembled beneath them, and Alex's senses snapped to attention. One of the biomechanical beasts had detected their presence. Its massive, segmented body, part creature, part machine, moved with terrifying speed, its crimson eyes glowing with malice. The air around it crackled with static as it approached. Alex pulled a weapon from his belt, a crude energy rifle, not nearly enough to take down such a creature, but it would buy them time. With a low growl, the beast charged, its metallic claws tearing into the ground. Alex fired, the shots striking its armor, causing the creature to momentarily hesitate. He stepped between the girl and the beast, determined to protect her. In the chaos, he moved with precision, using the landscape to his advantage, dodging the creature's attacks and firing at its weak points. The battle was short but intense. Alex's quick thinking and brute force were enough to drive the creature away, at least for now. He knew more would come. Drakkar was unforgiving, and the predators never stopped hunting. After the fight, Alex turned to the girl, who watched him with wide eyes, still weak but clearly astonished. The human had fought off a beast that should have killed them both, and now he stood, breathing heavily, yet unbroken. She didn't understand why he had saved her. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper, her Zalith accent soft and melodic despite the pain she was in. "I couldn't leave you," Alex replied, crouching down beside her again. "Not here." She didn't answer. Whether it was disbelief or pride that kept her from responding, Alex couldn't tell. But he had made his decision. He would stay and help her, no matter the cost. In the days that followed, Alex built a small, makeshift camp for them in a more secure area, hidden from the creatures that roamed Drakkar. Liara, as she eventually introduced herself, remained wary of him, though her condition improved under his care. They spoke little at first, but as time passed, she revealed the grim truth of her situation. She hadn't been stranded by accident. Her people had left her here deliberately. The Zalith believed in the brutal tradition of leaving the weak to fend for themselves on dangerous planets like Drakkar. It was a trial meant to test their strength and worthiness. If they survived, they returned stronger; if not, they perished, forgotten. Liara had been deemed too weak to be of use to her people. Alex listened in silence. He had heard of such customs in some corners of the galaxy, but hearing it firsthand still filled him with anger. To leave someone, especially a young girl, to die on a planet like this? It was beyond cruel. You don't have to face this alone, Alex told her, his voice firm. I'll help you. We'll find a way off this planet. Liara regarded him with suspicion. Why would you help me? My people would never do the same for you. Maybe not, Alex replied, shrugging. But I'm not your people. You're not dying here. Not on my watch. His words seemed to soften her defenses, just a little. Over time, they worked together, gathering supplies and planning their next steps. Though Liara still didn't fully trust him, they had formed a tenuous alliance. One night, as they rested near their campfire, the air grew thick with a strange energy. A low rumble echoed through the ground, and Alex's instincts screamed danger. He stood quickly, scanning the horizon. One of the largest biomechanical creatures he had ever seen was approaching, its towering form outlined against the stormy sky. Before Alex could react, Liara stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly. She raised her hand, and the creature stopped in its tracks, its red eyes dimming as if responding to some invisible command. Alex watched, stunned, as the creature stood still, as though waiting for further instructions. After a few moments, it turned and lumbered away, disappearing into the night. Liara's breath came in ragged gasps, her face pale and drawn. She looked down at her hands, trembling, unable to understand what had just happened. I don't know how, she stammered. Alex stood beside her, equally baffled. There was something more to Liara than either of them had realized. Something powerful, tied to this planet and its monstrous inhabitants. You've got a gift, Alex said quietly, his mind already turning with questions. And I don't think your people left you here just to die. Alex and Liara pushed forward through the harsh terrain, each step feeling heavier as they ventured deeper into Drakkar's twisted landscape. The journey was unforgiving. Every ridge they climbed revealed more dangers, more unpredictable threats. The biomechanical creatures they encountered became more aggressive, as if drawn to Liara's very presence. They stalked from the shadows, their red, unblinking eyes watching every move, gauging their defenses, waiting for the right moment to strike. Alex took the lead, teaching Liara survival techniques he'd honed through years of experience. They moved cautiously, always alert to the sounds and signals of the planet's predators. He showed her how to navigate through the hostile environment, how to listen to the subtle cues in the wind and watch the behavior of the creatures for signs of danger. The trust between them grew slowly, but steadily. Liara, though still unsure of Alex's motives, began to rely on his judgment, following his lead without question as the dangers around them increased. But the tension was palpable. The creatures were relentless, testing them at every turn. Some seemed to be simply observing, while others lashed out in sudden attacks, forcing Alex and Liara to fight or flee. Alex realized something was wrong. These weren't random encounters. The beasts were calculating, their attacks synchronized, as if they were part of some larger, intelligent force controlling the planet itself. Alex's instincts screamed that this was more than just the natural hostility of Drakkar. One evening, as they set up camp beneath a massive rock formation for some semblance of shelter, the ground began to tremble. A massive biomechanical beast, larger and more terrifying than any they'd encountered, emerged from the shadows, its enormous metal claws tearing into the ground with each step. Its glowing eyes locked onto them, and Alex could feel the weight of its presence pressing down on them, as if the very air had thickened with malice. Without hesitation, Alex raised his weapon, shouting for Liara to stay back. But the beast moved faster than he could react, charging at them with terrifying speed. Alex fired several shots, but they barely grazed its thick, armor-like hide. The creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the ground beneath them. It lunged toward them, and in that split second, something within Liara shifted. Instinctively, she raised her hand toward the charging beast, her eyes glowing with a strange, faint light. The beast froze mid-attack, its entire body trembling as if caught between two forces. It snarled and growled, but it couldn't move forward. Alex stared in disbelief as Liara, trembling with fear, held the creature at bay with nothing but her willpower. For a moment, it seemed as if the world stood still. The massive beast, which should have easily torn them both apart, was now under Liara's control. Slowly, it began to back away, retreating into the shadows once more. The glowing light in Liara's eyes faded, and she collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. She looked at her hands, wide-eyed, as if they belonged to someone else. What did I just do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Alex knelt beside her, still trying to process what had just happened. "You saved us," he said, his voice quiet but filled with awe. "Whatever power you have, it's the reason we're still alive." Liara shook her head, fear and confusion etched across her face. "I don't understand. I don't know how or why I can do this." Alex could see the terror in her eyes. She was frightened of herself, of the ability she didn't comprehend. But in that moment, he knew that her powers were the key to their survival. The creatures weren't just attacking out of instinct, they were reacting to her presence. There was something more to this planet, and to Liara's connection to it. "We'll figure it out," Alex reassured her. "But right now, your power is the only thing keeping us alive. You need to trust yourself." As they continued their journey, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that Drakkar itself was aware of their presence. The weather patterns grew more erratic, violent storms brewing out of nowhere, forcing them to take shelter more often. The very ground beneath them seemed to shift unpredictably, cracking open in ways that felt deliberate. It was as if the planet was alive, reacting to their movements. On one particularly stormy day, they found themselves cornered by another group of biomechanical creatures, these smaller but no less deadly. Their coordination was unnerving, their attacks precise, as if they had been waiting for this moment to strike. The creatures closed in, their razor-sharp claws gleaming in the faint light, and Alex quickly realized there was no way they could fend off this ambush with brute force alone. Liara's fear spiked, but this time she didn't hesitate. She reached out with her newfound power, her eyes glowing once more as she tried to control the creatures. But something was different. The creatures resisted her command, pushing back against her influence. They lunged at Alex, who narrowly avoided their attacks, shouting for her to stay focused. The planet itself seemed to be working against them, as if it wanted to separate them. The ground shifted beneath Alex's feet, causing him to stumble, and a powerful gust of wind knocked him off balance. He could feel the planet's malevolent intent, trying to drive a wedge between him and Liara. But Alex wasn't about to give up. With gritted teeth, he fought through the chaos, refusing to let the planet win. Liara, sensing his determination, focused harder on her powers, her control over the creatures slowly growing stronger. One by one, the beasts faltered, their movements becoming sluggish as her influence over them deepened. Eventually, they backed off, retreating into the shadows just like before. As the immediate danger passed, Alex could see the strain on Liara's face. She was becoming more confident in her abilities, but each use of her power took a toll on her. There was a quiet fear in her eyes, fear of losing control, of what might happen if she couldn't keep the creatures at bay. "Are you okay?" Alex asked, his voice calm but filled with concern. Liara nodded, though she still looked uncertain. "I'm fine, but I don't know how long I can keep doing this." Alex understood her worry. Whatever was happening on this planet, whatever connection Liara had to it, was growing stronger with every step they took. The creatures were drawn to her, as if she were the key to something much larger. And now, the planet itself seemed to be testing them, pushing them to their limits. "We don't have a choice," Alex said. "We need to keep moving. Whatever this planet is, it wants to separate us. But we're stronger together. You just have to trust your instincts." As they ventured deeper into Drakkar's unforgiving landscape, Alex and Liara came across something they hadn't expected. Nestled within the jagged mountains and mechanical ruins lay a vast, ancient structure, hidden from the world. Its architecture was unlike anything Alex had ever seen, but there was a familiarity in its design that seemed to resonate with Liara. She stared at the carvings etched into the stone, her face pale as the realization set in. This place was tied to her people. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy as they moved cautiously through the ruins, the walls adorned with ancient texts and depictions of monstrous biomechanical creatures, similar to the ones they had been fighting since their arrival. It was all connected: Liara, the creatures, the planet itself. Alex scanned the carvings, piecing together the fragmented history laid before them. The Zaelith had been here long before, using Drakkar as a proving ground. The creatures, once considered mere threats to survival, were tools for those with the ability to control them. Drakkar wasn't just a prison, it was a crucible designed to awaken latent powers within certain members of Liara's species. Those who passed the trial gained abilities that could rival any force in the galaxy. Liara's face twisted in disbelief as she took in the full scope of her people's legacy. She hadn't been left here to die for being weak, she had been sent to unlock powers she never knew existed. Her people had abandoned her for a far more insidious reason: to see if she would emerge with the ability to control the very monsters they had been fighting. If she couldn't master these powers, the planet would claim her, just as it had so many others before her. "It wasn't a mistake," Liara whispered, her voice trembling. "They sent me here, for this." Alex glanced at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "They wanted you to control the creatures." Liara nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and fear. She had been used, left on Drakkar like an experiment, all for the possibility of awakening a power she never asked for. Her whole life had been shaped by the belief that she was weaker than the others of her kind. Now, it was clear she had been placed here to prove otherwise, or die trying. The truth, though staggering, didn't ease the burden that now weighed heavily on her. As they moved further through the ruins, Alex could see the internal struggle growing within her. She wrestled with her newfound knowledge, caught between the fear of what she might become and the responsibility she now carried. Her powers were still unstable, and the planet seemed to feed off that uncertainty. "If I can't control this," Liara began, her voice shaking, "the planet will take me." Alex didn't hesitate, stepping in to offer his guidance. "You can control it. You're stronger than this planet, Liara. It's trying to break you, but it hasn't. We've made it this far because you haven't given up." Liara's eyes met his, filled with doubt. "I'm not like you, Alex. I can feel the planet inside me, pulling at my mind. What if I lose control? What if I become one of those creatures?" Alex's voice was steady, his gaze unwavering. "You won't. And if you start to slip, I'll be here to pull you back. We're in this together." Her lips tightened, her breath uneven, but there was a shift in her demeanor. She understood now that she couldn't survive this alone. Despite everything, she needed Alex's resolve as much as her own growing power. The bond between them had grown from one of mere survival to something deeper, a partnership where each relied on the other's strength to push forward. But the planet was not going to let them continue without resistance. As they ventured closer to the heart of Drakkar, it began fighting back with an intelligence that made Alex's skin crawl. The ground itself seemed to rise against them, forming barriers of jagged rock and shifting terrain that forced them off course. The creatures they encountered weren't attacking haphazardly anymore. They came in waves, their movements coordinated, as if they were extensions of the planet itself. Alex found himself in a constant battle, fending off attacks from all sides while the environment around them warped and twisted with malevolent intent. The air grew thicker, making it harder to breathe, as if the planet was trying to smother them. Every step they took was met with resistance, both physical and mental. And Liara, she was slipping. Caught in a trance-like state, her powers surged uncontrollably. At times, the creatures bent to her will, only to break free moments later. The planet's influence was seeping into her mind, clouding her thoughts. She would stop suddenly, her eyes glazed over, as if something deep within Drakkar was calling to her. Alex would have to snap her out of it, pulling her back from the edge each time. The planet was trying to separate them, knowing that together, they were strong. But Alex refused to let it win. His every movement was driven by sheer determination, fighting off the relentless attacks with an iron will. The creatures, the environment, even the shifting skies above, they all pushed against him, but Alex pushed back harder. In a moment of brief respite, Alex could see that the end was near. They were getting closer to the planet's core, where Liara would have to confront the full extent of her powers. The air here felt different, charged with energy, vibrating with the sentience that had been guiding their trials. The planet was alive, and it had chosen this place to make its final stand. Liara stood before the massive structure at the heart of Drakkar, the core of the planet's power. She looked at Alex, her face resolute but weary. "This is it, isn't it? The final test." Alex nodded, gripping his weapon tightly. "It is. But you're ready." Liara didn't respond right away, her gaze fixed on the swirling energy that radiated from the core. She knew what was expected of her: either she would master the power within her, or the planet would consume her entirely. Her people had placed this burden on her, but it was her choice how to face it. The planet's sentience began to manifest, a monstrous avatar rising from the earth itself, its form a grotesque amalgamation of rock and metal, towering over them. It was the embodiment of Drakkar's will, determined to stop them at all costs. Alex prepared himself, knowing this would be their hardest fight yet. But the true battle wasn't his, it was Liara's. As the monstrous figure loomed before them, Liara understood that her people hadn't sent her here to die or to be tested for weakness. They had sent her to either control or be controlled by the planet. And now, with Alex by her side, she knew she wasn't fighting alone. The air was electric, thick with tension as Alex stood before the monstrous form that had risen from the heart of Drakkar. The planet had manifested its will into this terrifying entity, a grotesque fusion of rock, metal, and pure malevolent energy. It loomed above them, pulsating with an ancient, powerful force that seemed to shake the very ground they stood on. Alex's instincts screamed at him to retreat, but there was no turning back now. His weapon in hand, he faced the towering beast with grim determination. All around them, the biomechanical creatures surged forward, drawn by the Avatar's presence. Alex's grip tightened on his weapon, and without hesitation, he began firing at the advancing horde. His shots were precise, but the creatures were relentless, swarming him and Liara from all directions. He ducked and weaved between the snapping jaws and razor-sharp claws, his mind focused solely on survival and protecting Liara. Every instinct, every ounce of training he had, came into play as he fought off the onslaught. The sheer number of enemies was overwhelming, but Alex's determination never wavered. In the midst of the chaos, Liara was locked in her own battle. She stood frozen for a moment, eyes wide as the full weight of her powers bore down on her. The planet's influence tugged at her mind, urging her to give in, to embrace the raw, unyielding power it offered. She could feel it calling to her, promising strength beyond comprehension if she would only surrender to it. The creatures around her slowed, sensing the shift in her. For the first time, Liara realized just how much control she had over them, but it came with a price. As Alex fought desperately to hold the line, he stole a glance at Liara. She was struggling, not with the creatures, but with herself. He saw it in her eyes, the conflict, the temptation to let go, to become one with the planet and its monstrous power. But he knew that if she gave in, she would be lost to the planet's will forever. "Liara!" he shouted over the roar of the battle. "Don't let it take you! You're stronger than this!" His words cut through the noise, reaching her in the midst of her internal struggle. Liara blinked, her gaze focusing on Alex. His unwavering determination and defiance against the overwhelming odds stirred something deep within her. She had watched him fight tirelessly, refusing to let the planet break him, even when every force around them seemed impossible to overcome. Alex's humanity, his compassion, his resilience, was what had kept them alive. And in that moment she realized it wasn't power that would save them. It was the very thing Alex embodied, the refusal to be controlled, the will to choose their own path. With a deep breath, Liara closed her eyes and centered herself. The chaotic energy swirling inside her began to calm. She reached out with her mind, not to take control of the creatures through domination, but to understand them. The connection between her and the planet shifted, and the creatures hesitated. They no longer moved as enemies, but as extensions of the life force that she now controlled, on her terms. The monstrous avatar roared, sensing its influence over her slipping. It lashed out with fury, sending waves of biomechanical beasts toward Alex in a desperate attempt to end the battle. But now, Liara was in control. She raised her hands, and the creatures stopped in their tracks, their glowing eyes dimming as they fell under her influence. The Avatar's grip on the planet began to falter as Liara's power asserted itself, pushing back against its malevolent force. The tide of the battle shifted. With the creatures now obeying Liara, Alex was able to focus on the real threat, the planet's avatar. He charged forward, his mind sharp with clarity, every movement fueled by the knowledge that they had a chance, however slim, to survive. Liara's connection to the planet had weakened its hold over the creatures, and the avatar's form began to crack, its once impenetrable body now vulnerable. But the final choice still remained. Liara stood at the brink, knowing that she could fully embrace the planet's power and control it forever, becoming its ruler. Yet, in doing so, she would lose herself, becoming just another extension of Drakkhar's will. The temptation was great, unimaginable power at her fingertips. But then she looked at Alex, his eyes filled with trust and hope. He had fought for her, not for power, but for the chance to live freely, to escape this place together. In that moment, Liara made her choice. She rejected the planet's offer of power, choosing instead to use her abilities to help Alex and find a way off Drakkhar. She understood now that true strength wasn't in dominating others but in the freedom to choose her own destiny. As she embraced this realization, the planet's control over the creatures shattered completely. The monstrous avatar let out a final, guttural roar as its form crumbled, defeated not by brute force, but by Liara's decision to reject its control. The creatures dispersed, no longer bound to the planet's malevolent will. The ground beneath them trembled as the avatar's energy faded, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. The battle was over. Alex and Liara stood together, exhausted but victorious, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced the planet's worst, and through their combined strength, they had survived. With the planet's sentience no longer a threat, Alex and Liara began their search for a way off Drakkhar. The once hostile landscape now seemed subdued, the creatures no longer aggressive but merely part of the planet's ecosystem. Together they found a ship, a relic left behind from some forgotten age, but still functional enough to get them off this cursed world. As they prepared to leave, Alex looked at Liara, his expression softening. "You did it," he said simply. Liara smiled, though there was still a weariness in her eyes. "We did it." They boarded the ship, leaving Drakkhar behind. As the planet faded into the distance, Liara reflected on everything that had happened. She had been sent to Drakkhar to either master its power or be consumed by it, but in the end, she had chosen something far more important: freedom. Alex had shown her that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in power or domination, but in compassion, resilience, and the ability to choose their own path. Their journey wasn't over, but as they flew into the vast expanse of space, one thing was certain: together, they had defied the odds and come out stronger. Drakkhar, with all its dangers and trials, was behind them now. But the lessons they had learned, and the bond they had formed, would carry them forward into whatever awaited them next.